trips, that involve, maybe some air travel, but also travel over land. I mean, everyone knows, I think, that travel by train has a smaller carbon footprint than travel by air. So, it's not always possible. But, to think about whether trips kind of within the UK or within Europe could be made by rail, and how to make that an interesting journey, so that the journey itself becomes part of the point of travel. And to think more about kind of building up to having a really good experience on, 1 or 2 trips a year rather than lots and lots of short haul flights, or, kind of shopping trips to New York and all that kind of thing might help us towards, a more sustainable future for the sector.
Are you connected to any other campaign groups in any way? Is there a big umbrella organisation, or are you just on your own when it comes to this sort of thing?
We're not formally connected to other organisations. As I say, we've kind of, we're in touch with some of the big environmental organisations who will have an interest in this issue. So Greenpeace at the moment has taken a strong position, for example, against Heathrow expansion, and that's something they're pursuing through the courts. They're looking at the kind of legal arguments about why it's inconsistent with other objectives. Organisations like WWF and RSPB actually will have policy staff who take an interest in these issues, partly because of the kind of climate change impact as well as the local ones on the ground. So, we certainly like to feel that we're part of a kind of bigger movement, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, that our particular kind of niche is a little bit unique. We're not aware of any other organisations who do quite the same thing anywhere else in the world.
So how can we find out more about the Aviation Environment Federation and other environmental issues?
Well, as you said, we tend to stick everything on our website. We haven't got any kind of paywall. We don't keep that for our members. We want to make that available for the general public. We've also got Twitter feed that we launched a couple of years ago, and we're sort of slowly building that up. And we're happy also to come and talk to people at events, I suppose, if that's helpful. So we certainly encourage people to get in touch if they've got queries and questions.
And the website's also the place to find out how people can become members. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. So we're completely funded through either charities, charitable trusts, or people's donations, or to our membership. And by joining AEF as a member, it means you also get access to our kind of casework staff and people who are able to respond a bit more in depth, I suppose, to people's individual questions and queries.
Okay, thanks, Cait. Thanks for your time.
Okay, good to talk.
The Aviation Environment Federation's email address is www.aef.org.uk. And as always, you'll be able to find the websites mentioned in the show at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Just look for the post for the 23rd of February show, and you'll be able to see a list of all the websites mentioned. You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. Still to come on the show, we're going to find out that really important news from the Civil Aviation Authority. But now we're going to find out about the travel state of mind. Eurostar have done some research and they've coined the phrase and put up 2 experts for interview. Chloe Guinn, Wanderlust Chloe, who's a travel blogger, and Honey Langcaster-James, who's a psychologist, to talk about what the travel state of mind is. And not only do we find out about the travel state of mind, there's a little bit of culinary tips as well about eating frog legs and snails, so do listen out for that. But as I've mentioned the travel state of mind a few times during this week's show, perhaps the best place to start is to find out what it means.
Well, a travel state of mind is a term that has come from some new research that's been done by Eurostar that's basically found that 2/3 of British people generally prefer their traveller selves, the kind of state of mind that they have when they're travelling. So this means they're less obsessed with technology, they're more interested in museums and culture when they're traveling, they're more adventurous and likely to try new things and new foods. And so this traveller state of mind seems to be a kind of a personality that develops, or a kind of way of being that comes out when people are on their adventures and travelling.
Why did Eurostar look into this?
Well, I think Eurostar wanted to investigate really, what it is that attracts people to sort of going on adventures and travelling. And obviously they run services that take you from city to city and very straightforwardly. And they wanted to look at, what it is that people get out of this. And so they surveyed an awful lot of people and found that, some quite surprising behaviours come out when people are travelling. So as I was saying, 66% say that they're more likely to visit museums and galleries and concerts when they're away, and 70% of people watch less of their sort of favourite TV shows. So it seems that we behave in quite different ways when we're travelling.
One of the ways that people behave differently is they go offline. I spent 2 weeks in a remote sanctuary in Namibia, and that 2 weeks of not being online was hell. But people, well, Eurostar found that people do. So is it just going to museums? What else do they do to get over the withdrawal symptoms?
Yeah, I think you're right. People do tend to go offline more, although they might take photographs and they might sort of share those with friends and family back home. Generally speaking, when people travel, they feel somewhat liberated from their kind of everyday lives, and they want to sort of take, everything they can from their trip, getting the most out of each moment. And so they're much more likely to kind of engage with their environment. That in fact, the research by Eurostar found that they're more likely to speak to new people and generate new friendships, and they're much more open to their experiences. I mean, psychologically, one of the big, what we call in psychology, one of the big factors of personality is the extent to which we are open to experiences. And, you can sort of generally, the general population will differ to that extent, with some people being very open in general in life and some people not. But what it seems from this research is that when we travel, we all become that little bit more open to experience, more ready to try new foods or ready to look at new things, learn about new cultures and make new friends.
The new food bit surprised me. I remember reading a review on TripAdvisor about a hotel in Turkey, and the reviewer complained that it didn't do traditional English breakfast.
That really bugs me.
It does me. And going on my own family's experience, very few of them actually try new food. So how many people are looking at trying new things when they go out to eat?
I think as a travel blogger, obviously I am the first one to try the weirdest things on every menu. But we're finding that a lot of people are, replacing their standard diets, perhaps their, scheduled fish and chips on a Friday, whatever it is, a lasagna on a Tuesday, and they're trying new things when they go away. I think it's 2/3 as well.
Yeah, and we're 67% in the research, yeah.
And we're more likely to be a little bit overindulgent. You know that feeling when you're like, oh, let's replace our standard healthy salad and we'll try, this indulgent dauphinoise because we're in France. You're much more open to these new delicious foods, and perhaps you do come back with a few extra pounds, but you've got a few stories to tell as well.
That's very true. I visited Paris back in October, and I tried frog's legs. Sort of if I was here in my local market or whatever, you could not get something like that near my mouth. But when in France, you're sort of open to these things and you want to try things.
Did you enjoy the frog's legs?
Do you know, I actually did. I think it was surprisingly good. Have you ever had them, Chloe?
I've not had frog's legs, but I have had snails.
Oh, see, now
I've had them twice, and the first time I didn't know I was having them, and it was a bit of a shock as I tried to chew down. But actually quite delicious. It's all about the sauce that you put on them, I think.
Really? I see now snails. I drew the line at snails. But frog's legs, yeah, they were actually surprisingly nice. They were a cross between fish and chicken. Sort of fishy chicken type things, but really nice. You're right, the sauce really helped. It was a bit odd because they very much looked like frog's legs,
Yeah.
You could sort of pick them up and dangle them. But yeah, I think when you're traveling, that's the thing, you are much more open-minded to trying new things that you would never do when you're back home,
And I think the thing is, when you're there, you really need to soak it all up, whether that's, checking out the local galleries, the architecture, or trying the weirdest thing on the menu, because you won't be able to try it once you get home and you might regret it.
So you're mentioning fish and chips on a Friday. Just reminded me of the village Facebook group. It goes crazy every Friday. Where's the chip van? Where's the chip van? I don't see.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Because when you're in a traveller state of mind, all the normal rules of life don't apply. You can sort of break outside of the norm and those sort of regular habits and do something entirely different. And I think that is what's so refreshing about travelling. It's putting aside everything that's normal and doing something different.
Some things aren't different, especially when I go away, because I spend more time with my wife. I have to follow her dress code, like if she was here with me right now, she'd be having a right go at me about what I'm wearing. Did Eurostar find that people slobbed out when they went away, or did they dress up to impress people?
Well, according to the research, Eurostar found that 54% of travellers dress up more than when they do at home. So I think there is something about, when you're in that traveller state of mind, you do tend to make a bit more of an effort, whether that's just because you're taking lots of photographs and you want to look good in your selfies, or whether it's just that you're away and you're feeling like you've got more time and effort and you want to spend, on your appearance. But half also say that they're more likely to blow their budget while they're away. So perhaps we just get into that kind of extravagant state of mind as well. As you were saying, Chloe, with the food, you do tend to sort of want to try everything and do everything.
And I think when you're going out for more dinners, more lunches, you do naturally want to look good for those. It's like a special occasion every day of the week when you're away.
You can follow me on Twitter @holiday_hut. So we now know about the travel state of mind, and I wanted to know more about the experts in more detail. And the first one I'm focusing on is Honey Langcaster-James, who you may know from TV, but probably not the way I pronounce names. She's been on RTV, Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky, the BBC. And as I mentioned, she's a psychologist and a life career coach. And I wanted to know, how should people prepare for travel? Because travel can be stressful.
Well, it's a very good point. I think, travel can be obviously the most exciting highlight of your year or your month or whatever, if you're lucky enough to be going somewhere. But it does come with stresses and strains. So, for example, if you are traveling as part of a family, you've got to think everybody's competing needs. You have to think about the practical things. Has everybody got what they need in terms of the clothing or equipment that they need? Sometimes you might have to think about any medication that someone in the family's on. So you have to plan and be practical about those kinds of things. Then there are kind of more the competing emotional and mental needs. Everybody, if you're traveling in a family, everybody will have different ideas about what they want to get out of a trip. Some people, it might be, I want to visit that museum, or another person, it might be, I want to try this food and have dinner, overlooking the Eiffel Tower or something like that. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that you communicate about your goals for the trip and your adventure, and think about what it is that you each want to get out of it. And then it's about reaching a compromise, because it depends how long you've got. And obviously we live in a world now where time is pressured, which is why it's so, helpful when you've got services like Eurostar, where you can get door to door, city to city in a couple of hours. Because let's face it, we want to pack as much in as we, into the time that we've got available. So I think trying to sort of cut down your travel time if you can, so that you've got the maximum amount of time to enjoy, and just, thinking about what everybody wants to get out of it.
You suggested discussing the trip, but when you're talking about teenagers and the parents, and each have very different views on what they can and can't do when they're away, is there any special preparation just specifically for teenagers?
For teenagers specifically?
Yeah.
I think one of the things you have to think about is, in terms of teenagers are going to want to be glued, probably more likely to want to be glued to their devices and to go online more. And one of the things you've got to think about are things like roaming costs and things like that. So it might be worth having a conversation with your teenagers and saying, look, we're going to have certain times when we'll be connected to Wi-Fi, whatever, but the rest of the time we're going to switch that off. We're going to have time together as a family to do quality things. So they might take a little bit of persuading depending on their age. But, one of the things that we do know is that when we tend to go away on an adventure or traveling in, to a new culture and a new place, there's plenty to do and there's plenty to see. So that can also sort of lead teenagers, even those who are more withdrawn or more